Do what thou wilt shall be the whole of the law. Hyperabyssic Ontology, Part 13. The Mystery of the Two Babalons. In the Zohar, the Garden of Eden on the earth is called the Lower Paradise, and it corresponds to the Shekinah in Malkut. However, there is also the Matronita, or supernal mother, corresponding to the higher heavenly paradise of Neshama in Bina, where the Shekinah is united with Hokmah, symbolized by the union of the initial Yod and He of the divine name Yod-He, Vav-He. Likewise, the Vav and final He of the name are Adonai and Tiferet, and Shekinah and Malkut, whose union, separated by the fall and restored through ritual observance, reflects and repeats that of Hokmah and Bina above the abyss. This Kabbalistic motif of the two Shekinahs and the esoteric correspondence subsisting between Bina and Malkut is explored in the Thelemic mystery of the two Babalons, based on the goddess's dual correspondence to both Sephiroth. This is represented in the Book of the Law by the relationship between Nuit, the goddess of the night sky whose body is the cosmic universe, and her avatar, the Scarlet Woman, unto whom is all power given, chapter 1, verse 15, and who is incarnated in and as the life world upon earth. The little world, my sister, my heart and my tongue, unto whom I send this kiss. 153. The union through magic of the universal and the particular is implied, with Nuit as the initial He of Tetragrammaton, and the Scarlet Woman as the He final. Yet both figurations of the goddess are envisioned as aspects of the single divinity Babylon, with Nuit as Binah and the Scarlet Woman as Malkut. As Crowley discusses in his commentary on Atu 17 of the Tarot called The Star, and attributed to the letter He in the Thelemic system, Nuit Bina is, quote, the surrounding space of heaven, where she is the pure philosophical idea, continuous and uniform, unquote. In contrast, the Scarlet Woman corresponding to Malkut is the aspect of the goddess in manifestation, and personified as a human-seeming figure. Quote, for Babylon is yet a further materialization of the original idea of Nuit, unquote. In Carl Jung's theory of archetypal symbolism, the female figuration of the manifest Babylon would be identified with anima, the soul or psyche, meaning that Nuit, the greater Babylon, would be the abstract form or spirit of the soul, conceptualized as the imaginary in Lacanian thought. Although the soul and the spiritual form of the soul can be conceived separately, they are different modes of describing a single self. Likewise, though Babylon appears under the dual aspect of the twin letters He in Tetragrammaton, the divine name signifies a unitary process. As it is written in the Shema, Hear, O Israel, the Lord your God is one. The esoteric conflation of Malkut and Binah I further interpret as indicating the role of the imaginary, corresponding to Bina, in the construction of the life world symbolized by Malkut. Although it is materially produced, the life world is, in and through this very process of production, idealized. It is, in other words, a shared magical illusion whose dispelling discloses not the true reality behind the illusion, but only the abyss of the real through which it becomes possible to inquire after the truth of the illusion. What is truth except what the judgments of human beings practically determine it to be? The horizon of being is hermeneutical and cannot be separated from human existence. There is a biome upon the physical object we call the earth whose life perpetuates itself distinct from human experience, and its mode of being is utterly alien from our own. This is due to the edible cut of symbolic socialization, through which we are initiated into language, and through it into the sacred magical space of the life world represented by Malkut on the Tree of Life. Conversely, through a therapeutic process of inversion onto the imaginary, the apparent solidity and givenness of the life world can be rendered transparent. All that is solid melts into air, is Karl Marx's famous description of the liberating effect of social critical enlightenment. If the life world of Malkut can be the site of the sacred, as represented by the utopian myth of the Garden of Eden at the beginning of time, then it is also the case that this sacredness has been primordially eclipsed within history. Tikkun and magic provide the means through which the individual and communal practice of ritual observance restores the sacredness of the world. The reuniting of Shekinah and Adonai that this affects is also the restoration of the identification of Malkut with Bina. Magically, this is said to consist in taking the He final of Tetragrammaton and setting her upon the throne of her mother, which is the throne of understanding mentioned in the vision of the ninth ether, the vision of the voice. In so doing, Crowley writes the He final of Yod He Vav He becomes the throne of the spirit of the sheen of Tetragrammaton. This is in accord with the injunction of the Sefer Yetzirah to understand wisdom and become wise in understanding. Search and contemplate concerning them. Make each thing to stand upon its own essence and replace the Creator upon his throne. Chapter 1, verse 4. The mystery of the two Babylons is further developed in the vision of the ninth ether of the vision of the voice. Having just crossed the abyss represented by the 10th ether during his intense ritual of goetic exorcism of the demon Karansan, Crowley's astrally projected body of light is now more directly able to scry the supernal region of the tree of life. The vision of the ninth ether should therefore open in Bina as the womb wherein the Magister Templi is born, with an epiphany of the goddess Babylon. The first part of the vision winds up being of Malkut, the palace of the king's daughter, the He final of Tetragrammaton. There is no contradiction, however, as the symbolic import of the vision is to set forth the secret mystical correspondence of Bina and Malkut, or of the Shekinah and Matronita. Crowley's vision reads in part, quote, "We are come unto a palace of which every stone is a separate jewel, and is set with millions of moons. And this palace is nothing but the body of a woman, proud and delicate and beyond imagination fair. She is like a child of 12 years old. She has very deep eyelids and long lashes. Her eyes are closed or nearly closed. It is impossible to say anything about her. She is naked. Her whole body is covered with fine gold hairs that are the electric flames that are the spears of mighty and terrible angels, whose breastplates are the scales of her skin. And the hair of her head that flows down to her feet is the very light of God himself. Of all the glories beheld by the seer in the ethers, there is not one which is worthy to be compared with her littlest fingernail. For even the beholding of this ether from afar is like the partaking of all the former ethers. And the ring of the horizon above her is a company of glorious archangels, with joined hands that stand and sing. This is the daughter of Babylon the beautiful, that she hath borne unto the Father of all, and unto all hath she borne her. This is the daughter of the King. This is the Virgin of eternity. This is she that the Holy One hath wrested from the giant time, and the prize of them that have overcome space. This is she that is set upon the throne of understanding. Holy, holy, holy is her name, not to be spoken among men." Unquote. Yet the identification is also with Babylon of the seven-lettered name, who is Bina Neshama. Quote, "This is she that hath bedecked her hair with 7 stars, the 7 breaths of God that move and thrill in its excellence. And she hath tied her hair with 7 combs, whereupon are written the 7 secret names of God that are not known even of the angels, or of the archangels, or of the leader of the armies of the Lord." Unquote. First of all, who is the father of all referred to in the text? If the great mother is Babylon Bina and the creative world of Bria, then the father is the archetypal world of Atziluth, the Yod of Tetragrammaton that accompanies the He, as does Hokmah to Bina at the level of the supernals, symbolized by the king and queen of the court cards in the tarot deck. Their progeny are the prince and princess, or son and daughter, represented by the Vav and He final of the divine name. Hence the castle in the vision is called the palace of the king's daughter. The Yod then signifies the symbolic order that inseminates the psyche via the Briatic imaginary, which serves in turn as the womb of the world through the process of its facilitation of the semiotic construction, private subjectivity, and its hermeneutical relationship to its experience, these latter categories being the Vav and He final. In itself, the phallic Yod is impotent, the dead letter of the system of signifiers devoid of signification. Only through an ontological self-empty of the dialectical kenosis of the spirit does the meaning implicit within the symbolic that is, in itself, become for itself and generate subjectivity, the Vav of Hashem, the divine name. In turn, the prince that is the son of the Father becomes the knight errant of the quest for the Holy Grail, incarnate in and as the king's daughter, who is the Shekinah in exile. Crowley writes, quote, "His mission is to redeem her by making her his bride. The result of this is to set her upon the throne of her mother, Bina. It is only she whose youthful embrace can reawaken the eld of the All-Father, or Hokmah, meaning to give spiritual life to the dead letter of the symbolic, regenerating the sacrality of the life world, while also giving rise to the ecstatic jouissance that Crowley phenomenologically describes as, quote, an expansion of the consciousness that will penetrate all space, and this will finally undergo a crystallization resplendent with interior light," unquote. Put another way, the Yod is the divine Nox of the Kabbalistic nothingness that through the magical process of creation represented by the formula of Tetragrammaton raises zero to the power of zero, whose value signifies the all that is also not, or not all, according to Lacan's terminology. As Aleister Crowley writes, "The beginning was nothing, the end must therefore be also nothing, but nothingness in its complete expansion. This extension is symbolized as fourfold because of the convenience of constructing the revolving symbol of Tetragrammaton. This formula represents a continuous process leading to the transcendence of space and time by continuously self-compensating change," unquote. Through this dialectic of magical equilibrium, change is stability, stability is change, and nothingness can dynamically express itself as everything, because everything is the dynamic expression of nothingness. The alchemical serpent bites its own tail as infinity expands eternally into itself. Meanwhile, the supernatural beyond traditional metaphysics disappears as the fictional illusion it always already was, and with it the tyrannical specter of the patriarchal monotheism of the Aeon of Osiris vanishes like mist before the golden dawn of the Son of Being. These themes are underscored by the imagery of the palace of the king's daughter depicted in Crowley's vision. Recall that within the larger sequence of the divine ascent described in the vision and the voice, this fortress is that of the supernals beyond the abyss, and it guards their frontier with the abyss, maintaining the boundary between the ideal and the real, respectively represented on the Tree of Life by the worlds of Absoluth and Bria above, and Yetzirah and Asaya below. With the establishment of this boundary, the palace can be said to encompass the entire manifest cosmos. This is why the vision states that the beholding of the palace is equivalent to partaking of the visions of all of the ethers that preceded it, because the fortress contains the whole of the phenomenal world within its walls, and therefore is a symbol for the world, which is the Hey final of Malkuth. This is why the vision of the palace occurs towards the climax of the vision of the voice and not at its beginning. Although this text mimics the Platonic genre of divine ascent, it does not replicate its dualist ontology. The metaphor of ascent serves the purpose of thematically enveloping and comprehending the universe, not departing from it. Thelema can be described in Lacanian terms as a pantheism of the real, meaning the whole of the all is dialectically also not all. Pan is the all, of which the Yod of Tetragrammaton is the Father. Yet the all is defined by Thelemic philosophy in terms of the Kabbalistic zero, defined as zero to the zero power, which is an undefined and indefinite transfinite continuum that describes the cosmic reality as incomplete and outstanding in both space, which is infinitely expanding, and time, which is eternally continuing. The king's daughter is therefore said to be the Virgin of Eternity, meaning her self-totalization cannot ever be finally completed, and therefore she is always ready to give birth to new possibilities. Read from this perspective, the Sephirah Malkuth already contains the whole of the Tree of Life within itself, not above, behind, or beyond itself. Recall that in the description of the Garden of Eden in Genesis, the Tree of Life grows in the midst of the garden, to which the text adds the clause, and the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, Genesis 2:9. The grammar is ambiguous here as elsewhere in the Torah, a feature of the Hebrew scriptures much beloved by the rabbinical exegetes, the Talmudic and Kabbalistic traditions, who frequently use variant readings to develop their interpretations. For example, what if this passage is read not as the description of two separate trees, but is referring to a single tree with two descriptions. What if the tree of life and the tree of the knowledge of good and evil are one and the same tree, the eating of whose fruit symbolizes the onset of psychological individuation, a process that both causes the fall into the human history of Oedipal experience, while also at the same time disrupting the psyche's narcissistic stasis, such that self-gnosis becomes possible. For such an enlightenment to occur, the two primary unconscious functions, namely the superego and the id, must be integrated with the self-conscious ego. The id straightforwardly corresponds to the nephesh in Kabbalistic symbolism, but the place of the superego is more ambiguous. The role of the censor is not immediately identifiable with neshama, because neshama is the psyche in its wholeness. And while the censor can potentially direct the psyche towards behavior conducive to its integration, it can also distract and disrupt this process. One of the basic critical insights of psychoanalysis is that the formation of the superego derives from the internalization of paternal social authority, and that this psychological condition is both positive and negative. In the context of patriarchy, for example, the superego function can learn to reinforce all kinds of problematic behavior. The healthy development of the psyche therefore requires a therapeutic inversion onto the imaginary to make its unconscious hidden structuring explicit and therefore constructively malleable. Through such a process of self-critical psychological reprogramming, authentic access to neshama becomes possible. If instead the psyche's intuitive impulses are simply accepted as the communication of the allegedly extra-rational truth, then narcissism and obsession will inevitably result. Another way of characterizing the life world as not all is to acknowledge its multiplicity. Not only is there always historically more than one version of human society existing at a time, but each particular person has their own inalienably unique perspective regarding the social life world they find themselves embedded within. Although our possibilities for being are interpolated by the historically prevailing symbolic order, these linguistically constructed social possibilities are inherently open-ended and incomplete, and this means that our response to them is ambiguous. As each human existent projects itself upon its possibilities for being, it must locate the specific trajectory of its unique true will. This idea can be represented in magical symbolism by positing that each separate hadith or star self has and is its own tree of life. In the vision of the ninth ether, this theme relates to the king's daughter's pelt of gold hairs, each of which is an angel, like the stars comprising the body of Nuit. These angels correspond to Yetzirah and signify the Ruach structures of the diverse human existence. Meanwhile, the archangels that ring the horizon of the vision govern the world of Bria that creates and upholds Yetzirah. And in the vision, they affirm that the daughter has been born unto all, which is another way of saying that she gives birth to all, as represented by the hairs of her pelt in the vision. Also, the symbolism of the daughter's hair is congruent with Nuit's self-description in Liber L of "My hair, the trees of eternity," 159. Here again, the esoteric identity of Nuit and the Scarlet Woman is affirmed as the productive matrix of the structure of the life world, modeled by the Tree of Life. Solipsism is not implied by the idea that each existed in his own tree of life, for only the ruach or personality of each tree is different from that of the others. The impersonal supernal level of each tree is formally indistinguishable from every other. Likewise, the life world of Malkut and the world of Asiya is the metaphorical seed bed that all the trees grow from in common, as hairs from the pelt of the daughter. Also, the general Sephirotic structure of every tree is both a mirror and copy of every other tree, due to sharing the same supernal structure, so much so that it is really a matter of practical convenience whether the tree of life be treated as one or many. As it is written, if ye confound the space marks, saying, they are one, or saying, they are many, if the ritual be not ever unto me, then expect the direful judgments of Rahor Kawit, 152. The judgments I interpret as the manifestation of the Sidra Akra, the left hand or other side of the tree of life, in place of the right hand side of Hesed, representing mercy and loving kindness, and that result from an overabundance of Geburah in place of its appropriate contextual equilibrium with Hesed. Such an imbalance conduces to klephotic obsession in place of magical trance. As for the rejection of the space marks that differentiate one thing from another being solely considered as either one or many, the denial of the analytical logical distinction leaves open the dialectical option. The difference be considered as consisting in things being both one and many at the same time, in and through the mediation of the more fundamental category of the none. For if it is the case that every number is infinite, 1, 4, in the sense that the value of every unique number or space marking equally expresses the Kabbalistic zero, then it follows logically that there be no difference made among you between any one thing and any other thing, 122, because difference and unity turn out to be equivalent from the perspective of the 0 equals 2 equation that is the formula of the Kabbalistic knot. Yet, how does this make sense practically? Here the example of interpreting the symbolism of the tree of life as consisting of one or many trees can assist in making this dialectical argument clearer. As was noted above, the supernal level of whatever diverse series of trees of life are posited are in some sense the same. But how precisely does this work out to be the case, since they are also clearly, in some sense, different? We have reached the descriptive level of the point event, which the Lemic philosophy posits as the atomic unit of existence, the kether whose self-expression through the faculties symbolized by the Sephiroth of the Tree of Life traces the experiential orbit of the star self through the body of Nuit. On this subject, Crowley writes, quote, "In the ontology of the new eon, whose primary theorem is 0 equals 2, kether exists only as the child of any marriage of one particular hadith with one particular aspect of Nuit. There are thus as many kethers as there are positive possibilities," unquote. How can it be the case that there are an infinite number of kethers if kether is the unity? However, there is no contradiction. Once the misleading dualistic assumptions of the metaphysics of the old eon of Osiris that underlie implicitly such an objection have been adequately criticized by the dialectical principles of the new eon. The most fundamental of these is that the Kabbalistic nothingness is a dynamically self-negating negativity, or what G.W.F. Hegel dubs the negation of negation. Applied to the idea of unity, the principle means that the moment there is a counting of one, the whole of the number line is implicitly posited to infinity, because once there is a number 1, it can be related to itself by addition, and so on repeatedly without limit. To posit a limit is therefore always also to posit the unlimited, and vice versa. Hegel writes, "The relation of the negative to itself is a negative relation, and so a distinguishing of the one from itself, and the repulsion of the one, that is, it makes many ones." Or, as he explains, whenever we speak of the one, the many usually comes into our mind at the same time. Whence then, we are forced to ask, do the many come? In the thought of the one is implied that it explicitly make itself many. The self-existing unit is not, like being, void of all connective reference. It is a connection with itself, and this connection is a negative connection. Hereby the one manifests an utter incompatibility with itself, a self-repulsion, and what it makes itself explicitly be is the many, unquote. In other words, in what Crowley calls the language of neshama, which is the logic which pertains above the abyss, unity is diversity, and diversity is unity. And therefore the true spiritual unity, or dialectical concept of the infinite, is the untotalized continuum of the whole, symbolized by Nuit, comprised by the uncountable all of the partial unities symbolized by Hadith, in mediation with each other. This is the company of heaven pictured in the Book of the Law, 1:3, within which the all is the not all, and the not all is the all, as signified by the wordplay throughout the Holy Book of the words all and not, which in turn correspond to the equivalence via gematria of the Hebrew words El, Aleph Lamed, and La, Lamed Aleph, which both add to 31, which is 93 when multiplied by the value of the supernal triad, and so forth and so on. All of which brings the discussion back full circle to the meaning of the mystery of the two Babalons, which is that the infinite, represented by the supernals, and the finite world of experience, symbolized by Malkut upon the tree of life, are really one and the same reality. And this true unity of the polar concepts is negatively realized in and through their very distinction from one another, as it is first posited by and then overcome through the path of magical initiation. Love is the law, love under will.